Hi everyone. Okay, we're going to have a look today at Queen Elizabeth. Now, Queen Elizabeth is my favourite character in all of history, not only because she also has red hair like me. I think she's a very, very interesting, very powerful leader, and there's a lot to dig into with Queen Elizabeth because she has such a long reign. Right, we're gonna start with some of the problems that she faces as ruler during her time. I've split this into 3 sections because I think we can't really cover it within 15 to 20 minutes. So this is going to be the first one. The next one we're going to have a look at is going to be religion. Today we're going to have a look at marriage, and then we'll have a look at the plots against her as well. So a few things to note about Elizabeth before we get into this. The main one is that she is a female leader, and at the time that's not common, and we'll discuss why more as we go on, but just to give you a little bit of an overview, I'll just get a notepad up so we can have a look at what's going on. So a bit of background about where we're coming from with Elizabeth. We will do sort of an overview of her in a video in a few videos time, but we've just come off the back of the Reformation. Okay, which hopefully you've had a look at. We've had within 10 years we have 4 Tudor monarchs. So we've got Henry VIII, then we've got Edward VI, then we've got Mary I, and then we've got Elizabeth. Now, when Elizabeth comes to the throne, she is only 25 years old. Okay, now you might think, well, there's been a female monarch before her. There has, however, Mary was married. Okay, so Mary is married. Elizabeth is very young. She wasn't ever expecting to become the queen because she was the second child of Henry VIII, but Edward, because he's male, comes first in the line of succession. Okay, and Henry had actually said, I don't recognise Elizabeth as my daughter because of what happened with her mother, Anne Boleyn. And we've got a situation where we've got a very young female monarch who is unmarried. Okay, so that's going to bring us to what we're talking about today. Our first problem for Elizabeth is the problem of marriage. Now, when Elizabeth comes to the throne, in 1558, she is very young and she is not yet married because there hasn't really been a need for her to marry. She hasn't needed to produce an heir at this point. She's been living quite a careful life under Mary. She's had some time in the Tower of London because of her religion, which we'll talk about in the next video. So there's quite a few reasons why Elizabeth isn't yet married. But when we have a think about Elizabeth and marriage, we need to just have a think about why she would and wouldn't get married, right? What are the pros and cons of her choosing to get married? Okay, so we'll just make a little list so we can just get our head around why Elizabeth might choose to do one or the other, right? So a pro of her getting married, a reason why she should get married, is Parliament want her to, and we'll have a talk about that, why that is in a second. So Parliament wants to, and if she doesn't, they aren't going to get off the back. They're just going to go on and on and on about it, and she might just want a bit of an easier life. She might think, well, I'm sick of you lot going on about this already. I'll just get married and have be done with. It's worth pointing out at this point that marriage at this time, if you were rich and powerful, was not necessarily because you loved the other person. Okay, that would be an ideal scenario if you did, but people married for wealth, for alliances, for business agreements. Marriage was normally to benefit both sides, rather than because you love somebody and you wanted to spend the rest of your life with them. Okay, so Parliament wanted her to. Another reason, as we've just mentioned there, was she could create alliances. Okay, another word for an alliance is a friendship. It's when two countries, in this case, would work together and support each other in times of war. Okay, so it will create alliances. Another reason she will be able to produce an heir, so have a child to carry on the Tudor line. Okay, if she doesn't have an heir to the throne, it's going to cause quite a lot of people to maybe try and take the throne off her, which again is one of the other problems that we're going to be having a look at. So producing an heir is another reason. She's a woman, so she needs to give her power to a suitable man. Okay, so in terms of the country, how things are done at the time, they are the pros of Elizabeth getting married. Now, the cons of Elizabeth getting married. And here I'm gonna link this one to Elizabeth producing the heir. The risk of dying in childbirth, very high at the time, okay, because of how underdeveloped medicine was and medical knowledge. It was very common for women to die in childbirth. So that's one reason for her not to get married, because if she doesn't get married, she can't have any children, because that was not done then. So the risk of her dying in childbirth is a problem, and a reason she might not want to get married. Another reason that Elizabeth wouldn't want to get married is a reason why some people would. Now, we've already put this on our pros list, a reason why she should get married, but a reason why she shouldn't get married is she would have to give her power to a man. Okay, she doesn't want to. She's a strong, capable, as we'll see, very capable ruler, and she doesn't want to give this power to a man. Now, I'm going to put this on as well, a distrust of men and a negative experience of marriage. Now, not her marriage, but her father's marriage. Henry VIII, famous for having 6 wives, and he, if you don't know the rhyme, divorced. He divorced his first wife, beheaded. He chopped off the head of Elizabeth's mother, Anne Boleyn. So she's witnessed, well, she was only 2 when her mother was executed, but her mother was executed by her father. So she knows what men are capable of. Henry VIII, I'm not saying every man went around beheading his wife, but she knows what a man in power could do. The 3rd one died. He divorced the 4th one just after seeing her in person, because she wasn't pretty enough for him. Beheaded his 5th wife, and then the 6th wife outlived him. So she doesn't have experiences necessarily of happy marriages to use as an example. And so we've got, risk of dying in childbirth, giving her power to a man, distrust of men, and negative experience of marriage. And the final one I'm going to put on this list is she loses her bargaining ability. Okay, so Elizabeth, and this is one of my favourite things about her that she does, she knows when she's young at least that her hand in marriage is a very, very valuable thing to have as a ruler, and she uses it to her advantage. And the way that she does that is at like parties and things, she would say, she might go up to the French ambassador and she might be like, oh, well, I might marry your king, but in order to do that, I'm going to need this from him. And when he's done this, I might consider marrying him. So the ambassador would go back and say, oh, Elizabeth would like you to do this, and then we might be in with a chance of creating this alliance. And then they'll do it, and Elizabeth will say, oh no, actually, I'll change my mind. And then she might go to the Swedish ambassador, and so on, and get what she wants politically by promising her hand and then withdrawing it. Now, if she were to marry and she were to settle on one person, that wouldn't be possible, because obviously she would be married. Okay, so we've got pros, we've got cons. Elizabeth does entertain, as we've said, the idea of getting married. She does go from person to person. Some are suitable, some aren't. So we're going to have a look now at the 4 main contenders for Elizabeth's hand. And again, we're going to have a look at the pros and cons of each of them. Okay, so these are the 4 men that she could have married. Didn't necessarily become close to marrying any of them, but they were in the running. So we'll have a look. We'll do pros in purple, and we'll do cons in red. Okay, so Philip of Spain. Now, Philip of Spain was the most powerful man in the world at this point. The Spanish Empire was the biggest empire in the world. So it's pros. We have a very strong alliance. Okay, a very good friendship to have there between Spain and England. A strong alliance, a lot of wealth, also protection. However, cons for Philip is he is Catholic. Okay, Elizabeth is Protestant, so they are different religions. If Philip were to take over, then England would remain Catholic as it had been under Mary. And another con, he had been married to Elizabeth's sister. And pretty much before Mary had even died, he did propose to Elizabeth. So he's Catholic. He already has experience of being not the King of England, but married to the Queen of England. But he would have made sure that Elizabeth kept the country Catholic rather than Protestant, which she didn't want. I'm going to come back to Robert Dudley because he's a very interesting case. Prince Eric of Sweden. Now, the positives, we don't have really very many positives for poor Eric of Sweden, but he is a Protestant. So he would have allowed Elizabeth to keep the country Protestant and would have supported her in the running of that. However, he's not very wealthy. And Sweden at this point is not a strong alliance. There's not really anything to be gained from Elizabeth marrying the Prince of Sweden. Okay, so we've got then Francis, Duke of Alençon from France. So here we have it would be a strong alliance, okay, with France. And in a negative, we've got that he is Catholic. I'm going to go back to our positive colour here because it's they're not as hostile, they're not as unfriendly to Protestants as the Spanish are. Okay, so we've got Catholic but not as hostile as Spain. So, oh, sorry, I'll just go through Robert Dudley and then we'll say who we think Elizabeth could have married if it were within her choosing. Now, Robert Dudley. Historians debate this, but it all of the evidence that I've read anyway, and everything that I've had a long time to think about their relationship. Basically, I think Elizabeth loved him. Okay, I think they grew up together. They've known each other for a very long time. They spent a lot of time together. He was without doubt her favourite in court. So she loved Robert Dudley, and I think that's pretty much the only positive that we have for him. If she weren't queen, maybe they would have got married. He does have quite a lot of negatives. Okay, it would have created rivalry between all the other men in court. She wouldn't gain an alliance because he was English. He was just a man in her court and was English, so no alliance. The Dudleys were quite a wealthy family, but not, you know, it wouldn't have gained much. She wouldn't have gained much by marrying him. He was actually lower ranking than she was. And the biggest one was he was married already to a woman called Amy Dudley. Now, Amy Dudley is an interesting person to look at. She actually falls down the stairs and dies while sort of in the midst of the most interesting time with Dudley and Elizabeth. Now, some people think that she fell down the stairs and her death was an accident, or maybe she threw herself down the stairs and died on purpose, or she fell down the stairs. Whichever way it happened, if Elizabeth were to have married Dudley at that point, it would have looked like he might have pushed her down the stairs to get rid of her to then marry Elizabeth. Okay, so there was no way these two ever would have got married because mainly of this scandal. So if we have a look then at the four candidates we've got, the more likely one you might think might be the Duke of Alençon. He's got more positives and less negatives than the other people. But like we said, she does lose a lot by getting married. And if we go back to our cons list, for Elizabeth, what she really wants is to be able to prove herself. And she is a strong leader. She is a capable leader. And what she actually chooses to do she never marries. Okay, so she reigns for 60 years, and within that time, she does it completely by herself. She never, sorry to drop my pen, she never marries. She reigns by herself very successfully. But the question of marriage and the succession does remain throughout her reign. Obviously, as she gets older, it becomes not a case of will she have any children, but who is she going to leave as her next in line to the throne. But while she's young and she's able to, it is a big problem for her because she doesn't want to marry, but there are people asking her to marry all the time. Okay, so they're who she could have married. However, none were quite right, and in the end she decides to rule independently as a woman, which, like we said, in that time was very, very unusual. She does have all male advisors around her, and we'll have a look at those later on. But that is the first of our problems on Elizabeth. So tune back in to the next video, and we will be having a look at our next problem for it, which is the problem of religion. Okay, I'll see you all there.